The morning sky was still a dark shade of blue when the train rolled into Haven Ridge, a quiet rural town that sat miles away from crowded suburbs and rule-obsessed neighborhoods. A soft mist covered the fields, glowing under the first touch of sunrise. The town was peaceful, slow, honest, exactly the kind of place where people minded their business and let others live. That peace was the only reason Jordan Hale had chosen this place. After years in the city, years of endless noise and endless expectations, he was finally ready for silence. Real silence. The kind where the only thing you heard at night was wind brushing through the trees and maybe a distant coyote. Jordan stepped off the train with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder and a folder under his arm, the deed to his new land, Faux. He had bought a massive 19-acre property on the outskirts of Haven Ridge, a farmhouse, a weathered barn, 2 abandoned sheds, and a pond that shimmered under the sun. The property had been in foreclosure and ignored by buyers because it needed a ton of work. But Jordan saw it as opportunity. Freedom. A place he could shape from the ground up. A place where nobody could tell him how tall the grass should be or what shade the roof was allowed to be. He didn't know, of course, that Trouble lived next door. Trouble wore sunglasses indoors, carried a clipboard everywhere, and believed rules were the only thing keeping the world together. Her name was Abigail Rowan, known to everyone as Abby Rowan, president of the Silver Lake Meadows HOA, a woman who treated her suburban community like a religious empire. She believed regulation saved society. She believed grass length was a moral issue. She believed she was chosen to maintain order. And she believed, unfortunately for Jordan, that the land he bought should have belonged to her HOA. Jordan arrived at the farmhouse an hour later in a rental truck. Phew. The place was old but breathtaking. Wild vines crawled across the fence. Grass swayed knee-high in the breeze. The old barn looked like it had stories to tell. And behind it all, the distant mountains stood tall like silent guardians. Jordan put his bags down and smiled at the view, imagining everything he would build here. A fresh start. He had barely opened the front door before a loud horn blasted behind him. He turned to find a white SUV parked at the edge of his property. The morning sun bounced off its polished surface. A woman stepped out, tall, stiff posture, hair tied so tight it looked painful, sunglasses so large they could block satellite signals. She had a clipboard under her arm and a pen tucked like a dagger between her fingers. Jordan already knew. Instinctively, he didn't even need to name the name. This was a Karen. "Excuse me," she shouted before he could even greet her. "This is private property." Jordan blinked. "Yes, mine." She stared as if he had insulted her ancestors. This land was never meant to be sold outside the Silver Lake Meadows Housing Association. "I wasn't notified of any transfer. You cannot simply move in." Jordan scratched his head. "Ugh, that's exactly what people do when they buy land." She marched forward, heels digging into the soft earth like she was trying to stab the ground. "I need to see your HOA acceptance documents." "Documents?" "I don't have any," Jordan said, almost laughing. "I'm not part of your HOA." She froze. So wind itself seemed to pause, unsure how to proceed. "You're not in the HOA," she repeated slowly, as if the concept was new to her brain. Nope, this land isn't inside the boundary. It never has been." "Ça va." She inhaled sharply. "That boundary is under review. It is highly probable that your property will be annexed." "Nope again." Jordan tossed his keys in the air and caught them. "The county maps say otherwise." But she didn't leave. She didn't blink. She scanned the property with disgust, as though she was examining a crime scene. "This grass is unacceptable. It violates 6 community aesthetic codes. My grass isn't in your community. That barn is unsafe. My barn isn't your problem. That tree is leaning at a hazardous angle." Jordan squinted at it. "The tree is literally standing straight," she scribbled intensely on her clipboard. "Why am issuing a notice?" Jordan wasn't sure whether to laugh or feel sorry for her. She tore a sheet off her clipboard and handed it to him. It was a preliminary non-compliance warning with a fine of $1,200. Jordan stared at the number, then at her, then back at the number. "This is a joke, right?" he said. "This is a legal document," she insisted. Jordan held the paper at arm's length and let it flutter to the ground. Abby gasped like he had ripped the Constitution in front of her. "You are already in violation of multiple policies," she said. Jordan picked up his bags and walked into his farmhouse. "Do whatever you want, just don't trespass on my land again." Abby stood there, stunned, humiliated, and vibrating with outrage. This was the moment she decided Jordan was an enemy. This was the moment she declared silent war. That night, Jordan sat on the back porch, eating a sandwich and listening to crickets. He didn't know much about shades, but he could sense a storm forming. He had dealt with people like Abby before, people who thought authority made them invincible, people who believed rules existed to be worshipped, people who didn't understand the word no. He finished his sandwich and shrugged it off. He wasn't afraid of a suburban dictator. Tomorrow he would start fixing the barn, clearing the brush, chopping the fallen logs. He had a plan. He had motivation, he had peace, but peace didn't last long. The next morning, a line of cars parked along his fence, 5 SUVs, all with HOA stickers. A group of well-dressed men and women stepped out with tablets and measuring tools. Jordan walked outside holding a cup of coffee, staring in disbelief. "A morning," he said cautiously. A short man with a tablet spoke first. "We're here for compliance verification." Jordan raised an eyebrow. "Compliance with what?" "The Silver Lake Meadows Code of Conduct," the man said. "I'm not in Silver Lake Meadows. We'll determine that," the man replied confidently, opening a digital map that looked freshly edited. "Our president has recently proposed a boundary extension." Jordan laughed. "A proposed doesn't mean approved." The man ignored him and began measuring the fence. Another woman walked toward the barn, taking pictures at every angle. A third person pointed at Jordan's grass and made disapproving noises. Jordan placed his coffee cup down and raised his voice. "Stop. Nobody touches or inspects anything on my land without permission." The group paused. The short man cleared his throat. "We don't need permission. We have authority granted by who?" George snapped. "We're HOA. That's like saying a club membership gives you police powers." He looked around the group. "If any of you step past that fence, I will call the sheriff." They hesitated. They hesitated. Some exchanged glances. Maybe none of them had ever been challenged before. Maybe all of them had lived so long under Abby's rule that they thought her power was real. Jordan stood tall. "And now get off my property." Slowly, reluctantly, they backed away. The short man muttered, "We'll be back." Later that day, Jordan drove into town for supplies. The local grocery store was small, warm, friendly. People greeted each other by name. The woman at the register, Martha, gave him a welcoming smile. "You must be the new guy on the old Harper farm," she said. "That's me. So that's me." "A word travels fast around here. Though I also heard you had a run-in with Abby Rowan?" Jordan laughed. "Is she always this intense?" Martha leaned forward. "A sweetheart, that woman tried to write a violation notice for a cloud once because its shape was inappropriate." Jordan stared. Martha nodded. "She runs that HOA like a military base. People don't argue with her." "Well, didn't argue. Looks like you're the first." Jordan left the store with fresh lumber, paint, and bags of feed. He felt amused, but a little uneasy. Abby wasn't just persistent, she was obsessive. Obsession, mixed with ego, mixed with invented authority. That was a dangerous cocktail. That night it rained heavy and cold. Thunder rumbled across the fields. Jordan sat inside planning renovations, unaware that someone was out there. Watching. Lights flickered at the edge of his property. Car headlights. A figure stepped out, holding the familiar clipboard. Rain hammered her umbrella as she tiptoed toward his fence and inspected the barn from a distance. Abby. She wrote notes furiously as lightning illuminated the sky. She was documenting the barn in the middle of a storm. Who does that? What kind of person inspects a barn during a thunderstorm? Jordan watched her from the window baffled. "She's insane," he whispered. The next morning, Jordan woke up to something taped on his front door. A giant stack of papers, 50 pages, each stamped with HOA violations. He flipped through them. Unapproved structural color, unapproved structural color. One sanctioned pre-existing shed, a ground cover in breach of community appearance code, a potential livestock planning without permission, excessive tree growth, unauthorized personal freedom. Okay? That last one had to be Abby's handwriting. Jordan shook his head and laughed, but this time it wasn't amused. This was harassment, this was personal, and this was just the beginning, because while Jordan saw a farm, Abby saw a threat to her empire. Jordan spent the rest of the morning pacing across his porch, flipping through the 50-page stack like it was a script for a comedy play. Each violation seemed more ridiculous than the last, but the sheer volume made it clear. Abby wasn't just irritated, she was launching a one-woman crusade. It was almost funny how far she was willing to go to control land she didn't own. Almost. But dealing with a power-hungry HOA president next door wasn't how Jordan planned to start his new life. By noon, he had loaded all the violation papers into a cardboard box and shoved it under the kitchen table. He had actual work to do. He changed into boots and gloves, grabbed tools from the rental truck, and headed to the barn. The wooden planks were warped and rotting. The roof looked like it could collapse in a strong breeze. Fixing it would take weeks, maybe months. But he liked the challenge. He was halfway through examining the sagging beams when he heard footsteps crunching in the gravel. He froze. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, someone walking as if they owned the place. Jordan stepped out of the barn and saw a stranger approaching. A tall man wearing a perfectly ironed dress shirt tucked into khaki pants, hair neatly combed, the kind of guy who looked allergic to dirt. The man smiled politely. Good afternoon. I'm Victor, Vice President of the Silver Lake Meadows HOA. Jordan sighed internally. Of course, Victor continued. I was hoping we could speak about your situation. My situation? Jordan echoed. Yes. You're living on land adjacent to our community, and that creates complications. Jordan crossed his arms. Complications for who? For the HOA? Victor replied gently, as if explaining something to a child. You see, we maintain a very high standard. Property values, curb appeal, safety, these things matter. When a property like yours sits right next to us, it directly affects us. For example, the barn. My barn isn't even visible from your neighborhood. Victor kept smiling, but it faltered slightly. Even so, there's the matter of aesthetics for the area overall. Jordan stared. Let me guess. Abby sent you. Victor chuckled nervously. She strongly suggested I speak with you. She feels you may not be aware of local expectations. Jordan tilted his head. Moya said, expectations don't apply to land outside your AHO. Victor hesitated, then lowered his voice. She's currently pursuing annexation. Jordan laughed so hard Victor's smile vanished. Annexation? What is this? A medieval kingdom? Victor shifted uncomfortably. Look, she's passionate. But she isn't unreasonable if you simply agree to follow the basic guidelines. No, Jordan said before he could finish. I'm not joining your HOA. I'm not following your rules. I bought this land because it's free from all that. Victor's polite expression stiffened. I see. He pulled a folded document from his pocket and handed it to Jordan. This is a petition for voluntary integration into Silver Lake Meadows. Abby would appreciate your signature. Jordan didn't even look at it. He tore the paper in half, then tore those halves into quarters, letting the pieces fall to the ground like confetti. Victor stood frozen, mouth slightly open. Tell Abby I'm not part of her kingdom, Jordan said, and I never will be. Victor turned and walked away quickly, like someone fleeing a crime scene. Jordan shook his head and returned to the barn. He didn't want a feud. He didn't want drama. He just wanted to live in peace. But people like Abby didn't understand peace. They understood control. By evening, Jordan had cleaned out half the barn and the sun was sinking behind the hills. He wiped sweat from his forehead and walked toward the house when he noticed something strange, an unfamiliar car parked near the edge of his property. It was angled so that the driver could see the barn, the porch, the yard, everything. Jordan walked slowly toward it. The window rolled down. It was a teenage girl chewing gum. She looked annoyed and bored, like she was being forced to do homework. You Jordan Hale? She asked. Yeah, the girl sighed dramatically. My mom wants you to know she's giving you one last chance. Jordan blinked. Your mom? Oh, Abigail Rowan, the girl said in a monotone voice. Then she rolled her eyes. I'm supposed to deliver the message exactly how she practiced it. Jordan waited. The girl straightened her posture and recited like she was reading from a script. A failure to comply with the Silver Lake Meadows regulatory expectations will result in escalating enforcement protocols and legal consequences. Jordan let out a short laugh. How many times did she make you rehearse that? 14, the girl grumbled. And she made me wear this stupid blazer. Jordan couldn't help noticing the girl's personality was nothing like Abby's. She had that rebellious spark, the kind that came from being parented by someone who sucked the fun out of everything. You don't seem too excited about all this. Jordan said gently. The girl snorted. My mom is insane. You have no idea. She once grounded me for 7 weeks because I glued googly eyes on the mailbox. Jordan raised his eyebrows. Is 7 weeks? She said it violated the mailbox uniformity code. The girl sighed, leaning back. Anyway, that's the message. Consider yourself warned. Jordan gave her a sympathetic nod. Hoo-hoo, sympathetic nod. Oh, thanks for delivering it, she shrugged. Whatever. Also, welcome to the neighborhood. Technically. Then she drove off. Jordan watched her leave, feeling a mixture of amusement and concern. If Abby was sending teenagers to threaten him, this was escalating faster than he expected. That night, the wind howled across the fields, rattling windows. Jordan sat on the couch, reading emails on his laptop, when a loud bang echoed from outside. He set the laptop down and rushed to the porch. A metal sign had been hammered into his fence. He grabbed a flashlight and read it. A Silver Lake Meadows buffer zone. No entry without permission. Trespass will result in fines. Jordan's jaw tightened. They were trying to claim his fence. Then he noticed something else. Fresh tire marks near the barn. Someone had driven onto his property while he was inside, and Jordan knew exactly who. He walked back inside, heart pounding with controlled anger. He didn't want to fight, but he wasn't going to let someone steal authority they didn't have. He picked up his phone and made a call to the county office. Opa, a calm voice answered. Haven Ridge County Zoning Department. How may I help you? Jordan took a breath. Hi, I need to report a boundary dispute and harassment from an HOA that doesn't legally include my land. That phone call changed everything. The next morning, a county officer arrived. A man in uniform stepped out of the truck, shaking Jordan's hand firmly. Officer Parker, we've had complaints about Silver Lake Meadows before. What's going on? Jordan explained everything. Abby's threats, the fake violations, the trespassing, the attempts to claim his land. Officer Parker took detailed notes, his eyebrows slowly rising higher and higher. Finally, he said, I'm going to pay your neighbor a visit. Jordan watched him walk toward the HOA neighborhood. The officer's truck disappeared behind the trees. Then silence. 10 minutes passed. 20, 30, 30. Then the yelling started. Jordan didn't mean to go near the fence, but curiosity dragged him there. He stayed hidden behind a tree as voices erupted from Abby's driveway. Officer Parker was speaking loudly, clearly agitated. Abby was standing with her arms crossed, shouting back at him. Homeowners peeked out from windows. Jordan couldn't hear the words clearly, but he recognized the tone. Abby was losing, and she knew it. Parker finally pointed his finger directly at her, said something firm, then walked back to his truck. Abby stood frozen on her driveway, mouth open, face red with fury. Not embarrassment, but rage. Pure, unfiltered rage. When Officer Parker returned to Jordan, he shook his head. If she tried to tell me she has county-level authority, he gave a short laugh. She doesn't. She won't stop though. Fool, he won't stop though. We're starting an investigation. Jordan thanked him, but deep inside he felt a shift. An invisible line had been crossed. This wasn't just an annoying neighbor anymore. This was a battle of control versus freedom, and only one of them could win. The next few days stretched into a tense silence, one that didn't feel like peace, but like the air was holding its breath before a storm. The owner worked the farm quietly, repairing fences, checking irrigation lines, feeding livestock, pretending everything was normal, even though he knew something dark was moving under the surface. Karen didn't show her face for almost 48 hours, which was suspicious in itself. Because Karen not showing up was like the sun refusing to rise. It meant nature was preparing something unnatural. He felt the first sign on the third night. A black SUV parked near the HOA entrance, then another, and another. Not neighbor cars, not board members. These were tinted window, out-of-state plated 2 new vehicles. People inside them didn't step out, didn't talk, didn't move, just sat there, watching the farm. Even his dog sensed it, growling toward the property line, pacing restlessly. When morning came, the SUVs were gone. But new trouble stood at the gate. A tall man in a suit, a woman holding a binder, and Karen smiling wider than she had in days. The owner walked toward them slowly, squinting as the sun hit the cluster of people. Karen stepped forward. A good morning, violator. A Karen, he said with mild annoyance. Who are the extras? The tall man extended a hand without emotion. I'm Mr. Ellison, attorney representing the HOA. The owner didn't shake his hand. Oh, congratulations. The woman opened her binder. We're here to inform you that the HOA is pursuing a legal action to forcibly integrate your land into our residential covenant. He blinked, a single slow blink, then laughed. Karen's smile widened at his laugh. Oh, don't worry, you won't find it funny when the order goes through. We have a legal claim. You don't. We do, the attorney interjected. Under community expansion precedent, a community of houses the owner cut in. This is a farm, not a fifth bedroom. Karen's voice sharpened. Your farm is disruptive. Your equipment is loud. Your animals smell. Your animals smell. Your animals smell. Your presence lowers home values. It's a farm. That, Karen said proudly, is exactly why you're being absorbed into HOA authority. He stared at her. Absorbed? What? Am I a sponge? A problem, Karen corrected. The attorney handed him a thick stack of documents. Your formal notice, Huss. He took it, flipped through it. It was nonsense. Pages of expected neighborly conduct, a quiet hours, approved grass length, and acceptable breeds of livestock. Halfway through the stack, he stopped. Approved livestock list. Toy poodles, indoor cats, goldfish. He looked up. I own cows. Karen shrieked triumphantly. Exactly. So you're violating section 14 before you're even in the HOA? He folded the papers casually. No, the attorney raised an eyebrow. No what? No, I'm not joining your HOA. It's not optional, Karen snapped. It is as not. It really is. It's not. It really is. Karen's voice rose an octave. You can't say no to me. Oh, watch me. The attorney cleared his throat. Sir, the association is prepared to take this to court. You will lose. Me won't. Karen smirked viciously. Oh, you poor clueless man. You really think you can fight an entire HOA? We're practically a government. North Korea is more lenient, he muttered. Karen gasped as if struck. How dare you? The attorney stepped in again. You need to sign this. Today, the owner looked at the pen, then at Karen, then dropped the papers on the ground. Karen shrieked like a kettle exploding. Pick that up. He walked away without another word. That evening, the HOA neighborhood glowed with an abnormal level of activity. People whispering on sidewalks, running around with clipboards, flashing lights flickering from house to house. Something was being prepared, bigger than citations, bigger than drones. He saw the first sign, a giant temporary fence being delivered, not on his land, on the HOA side, like they were preparing to cut his property off visually, or preparing something to block. His phone buzzed, unknown number. You need to be careful, the message read. A Karen hired private security. He read it twice. Private security. That explained the SUVs, service. He grabbed his jacket, stepped outside, and sure enough, movement in the tree line. Not wild animals, not residents, people, watching. Later that night, just past midnight, he heard footsteps near the barn. Slow ones, heavy, deliberate. He walked out quietly, no flashlight, just listening. A shadow moved near the fence. Too large to be a raccoon, too quiet to be a deer. He stepped forward. You picked the wrong farm tonight. The shadow froze, then bolted. He ran after it, fast, cutting across the dirt, gripping the fence post as the figure scrambled back into the HOA side. But before the intruder vanished, something dropped from their pocket. He picked it up, a folded map, a map of his land, with circles and red markers. His barn marked entry point, his shed marked a target, his house marked a night watch area. He stared at the paper, jaw tightening. This wasn't harassment anymore. This was planning. The next morning, he confronted Karen at the fence. She stood there smirking, as if she'd been waiting to be approached. He held up the map. Explain. Karen blinked with false innocence. Oh, what's that? Someone onto my property. She crossed her arms. Approve it. He stepped closer. Someone is planning something, and if it's you, it isn't, Karen said quickly, too quickly, then added, and even if it was, you can't do anything. You're playing a dangerous game, she smiled coldly. No, you are. The board members behind her murmured in agreement. Karen leaned in slightly. You humiliated me. Twice. You embarrassed my board. You mocked my authority. You think I'll just let that go? You should. But I won't, Karen whispered, eyes narrowing with venom. I never lose. Her voice dropped lower, soft but icy. You made this personal. Now I'll make your life impossible. He took a step back, studying her face carefully. You have no idea what you're starting. Oh, I do, Karen said. By the time I'm done, your farm will be nothing but a legal battlefield, or he, a tollfield. She turned away dramatically, walking back to her neighborhood like a villain returning to her castle. The owner stood there silently. He knew she wasn't bluffing. Karen was going to escalate, hard, fast, ruthless, and she did. 2 days later, a county-wide notice appeared in his mailbox. A petition signed by nearly every HOA resident. A petition demanding the county restrict farming equipment near residential zones, remove livestock dangerous to community safety, require permits for all farm activity, investigate excessive noise, smells, and the visual pollution, and most insane of all, ban him from entering a shared easement that they falsely claimed existed. He shook his head slowly. Karen hadn't just escalated, she detonated. Later that evening, as he fed his animals, he noticed something strange. The HOA street lights were dimmer than usual, then off. Every single one. The entire neighborhood went dark. Then flashlights, dozens, moving toward the fence, slowly, like a crowd approaching a ritual site. Karen appeared at the front holding a lantern like she was leading a revolution. "Attention, farm owner," she shouted theatrically. "We, the HOA community, are here to conduct a mandatory inspection." The owner stared. "At night, this is when violations are easiest to spot," she yelled confidently. "You've lost your mind." Karen raised her lantern higher. "We will enter your land, and you will comply." "No, I won't." "Yes, you will. This is a community order." He stepped forward. "Across this fence, and I'll call the sheriff." Karen grinned. "The sheriff already got 50 complaints about you." "And they dismissed them," she paused. Just a flicker, a microsecond of doubt, but then her voice returned, louder, shriller. "We warn you, we are coming in." Behind her, the HOA crowd cheered like an angry mob. He sighed. "Don't do this. We already decided," Karen bellowed. The crowd took one step forward, then another, then another. He reached for his phone, not to call the sheriff, but to play the video he took last week. The video of HOA members breaking into his barn. He blasted the audio on full volume. The entire crowd froze. Karen turned pale. "You want an inspection?" he said calmly. "Let's start with yours." Karen swallowed hard. That was taken out of context. The crowd murmured. Some stepped back. Some turned away from her. He stepped closer to the fence. "You keep pushing, Karen. I promise you, you'll lose more than just a vote." Karen trembled with fury. "This isn't over." "I know," he said. "That's the problem," she screamed again, voice cracking. "I'll get you off this land. I swear it." And behind that scream, behind that shattered voice, was something far more dangerous than anger. Desperation. The night Karen tried to ban me from my own farm had settled into a strange silence, the kind where even the crickets hesitate to chirp because the air feels heavy with the aftermath of somebody's stupidity. The HOA board had scattered like pigeons the moment county deputies pulled up, and Karen had stormed home stiff-legged, mumbling threats and fake laws like a malfunctioning fax machine. I thought maybe, just maybe, the storm was over, but that was only the beginning. The next morning, as I stepped out on my porch with coffee in one hand and boots still unlaced, I noticed something odd right away. 3 white SUVs, spotless and matching like they'd rolled out of a catalog, titled "A Pretend Government Vehicles," were parked in front of my gate, our park in front of my gate. Their hazard lights flashed in sync as if choreographed, and a big vinyl banner hung between 2 metal stakes they drilled into my land during the night. "Unauthorized agricultural activity under investigation," the banner claimed. At first, I thought it was a prank. Some neighborhood kids? Maybe it did. But then the driver door of the middle SUV swung open, and out stepped the one person whose face could curdle milk. Karen. She was wearing a reflective vest that said HOA Field Authority, cargo pants, and a baseball cap with an embroidered eagle, as if she had been appointed by the founding fathers themselves. She also had some kind of clipboard, the universal prop for people pretending to be important. "Good," she barked as she spotted me. "You're awake. We need to review the violations immediately." I took a slow sip of my coffee, staring at her over the rim. "You drilled those stakes into my soil," I said calmly. "At what point did you think that was a wise choice?" She frowned like I'd interrupted her mid-monologue. "This is an active investigation zone," she declared. "Upper HOA Jurisdiction, Section 7, Subsection 13, Paragraph 9. "You don't have jurisdiction here," I reminded her, speaking slowly in case her brain needed buffering time. "This farm is county land. You can't even regulate your own neighbor's petunias without filing a form." Her nostrils flared. "We have extended authority when community welfare is threatened." "What welfare? The goats? The tomatoes?" "Karen, please." She pointed her clipboard at me like it was a weapons as a weapon. Your activities are suspicious, unregistered, and hazardous. I blinked. Karen, I planted corn, and the HOA will be inspecting it. I couldn't help it. I laughed. My actual full-body laugh slipped out before I could control it. She stood there fuming like a kettle. Sata. While I was still amused, she waved her hand dramatically. The SUV doors flew open. 4 men emerged wearing polos labeled HOA Compliance Volunteers. They walked in formation, holding tiny orange cones and a measuring wheel like they were about to survey the borders of a new nation. Set perimeter. She barked. They placed the cones around my gate in a crooked line, apparently convinced that orange plastic had magical authority powers. One of them, a freckled 30-something with a beard too short to be impressive, started rolling the measuring wheel across my driveway. Unauthorized soil density, he muttered. I stared. How do you measure soil density with a wheel? He didn't answer. He just nodded to himself like he'd solved the mystery. I pinched my nose. Karen, stop. You can't just show up with a dollar store SWAT team. She puffed her chest. For chest. We are establishing a temporary occupation zone for HOA security. I nearly dropped my coffee. Occupation? Did you just say occupation like we're in a military documentary? As long as necessary, she replied. Until we determine what illicit activities you're performing. At this point, I wished I could say I walked away. But no, I had to see how deep her delusion went. So what's the plan? I asked. Confiscate my tractor? Arrest a scarecrow? Arrest a scarecrow? Interrogate a pumpkin? Karen looked at me with the seriousness of someone delivering tragic news. We received a report from a concerned resident that you were transporting suspicious materials into your barn late last night. My brain stalled for a second. You mean the bags of feed? You mean the bags of feed? Her eyes narrowed. I defined feed. It's food for animals. She scribbled something. So you admit you are conducting undisclosed agricultural expansion. I sighed. Karen farms have animals. Animals eat. Eating requires feed. None of this is new. She stepped forward dramatically. We suspect your barn is being used for improper storage. It may pose a threat to the HOA. How could my barn pose a threat to the HOA? It is within line of sight of our neighborhood walking trail. I just stared, speechless. That was it. That was her entire argument. Then she snapped her fingers. The bearded volunteer came running with a laminated sheet that looked like it had been printed with clip art. Per HOA visual harmony standards, she announced, a no structure may display unapproved forms. My mouth hung open. It's a barn. We a suspicious barn, she corrected. Karen, do you want to inspect the feed? Would that help? Her eyes glimmered with triumph. Yes, I demand full access. I shrugged. Oh, fine. Follow me. Follow me. I led the HOA expeditionary force toward the barn, Karen marching in front like she was leading a parade no one showed up for. As I unlatched the barn door, she lifted her phone to record, whispering into it like she was narrating for National Geographic. Wait, we are about to witness unauthorized storage in the wild. Notice how the suspect attempts to appear cooperative. The door swung open. Inside were bags of goat pellets, hay bales, a toolbox, a cooler full of ice, and my goats? 2 of them, staring at the intruders with disapproval levels only goats can manage. Karen gasped dramatically, clutching her chest. What is that? It's a goat, I said. It's staring at me. Still a goat. She pointed at it like she discovered a mythical creature. Is it licensed? It's a goat. She flipped through her papers. This species is known to be aggressive. She literally just eats weeds. The goat licked Karen's reflective vest. Karen shrieked like she'd been abducted. Eads made contact. The volunteers rushed to her side, forming a protective triangle while the goat blinked slowly, unimpressed. Retreat, Karen yelled. We need biohazard protocol. The bearded volunteer threw one of the orange cones at the goat. The goat ate it. Karen screamed again. I rubbed my face with both hands. Please leave. This barn is now under HOA quarantine, she declared. No, it's not. I'm placing an official notice. She slapped a piece of paper onto my barn door with scotch tape. It fluttered to the ground. She taped another one. It also fell. She taped the third one using extra tape. It fell slower, but it still fell. She stomped her foot, picked up all 3, slapped them against my chest, and stormed off shouting, "This isn't over." As the SUVs rolled away, 1 cone short, I looked down at the paper sheet. They weren't even printed straight. The text was half cut off, and one page still had a "Good morning" calendar border on it. The goat nudged my leg, unimpressed. I finally exhaled. Part 4 wasn't supposed to be like this. But with Karen, there was always another storm coming. I should have known the moment Karen retreated with her HOA squadron of dollar store deputies that she wasn't done. Karen never quits. Karen pauses. She reloads. The next 48 hours on my farm were strangely peaceful, almost suspiciously quiet. The goats grazed like philosophers, the chickens strutted like runway models, and the sky stayed clear enough that even the clouds were suspiciously absent. And then it started. It was 6:12 a.m. when I woke up to a low humming sound. Not machinery, not engines. Something stranger, like dozens of buzzing insects, but heavier, deeper, mechanical. I pulled aside the curtain. My entire fence line was surrounded. Drones, real drones, not store-bought toys, big ones. Black, blinking, hovering at the exact same height like they had been programmed by someone who shouldn't be trusted with a toaster. And standing right at my gate, holding a remote control bigger than her handbag, was Karen. She wore tactical sunglasses even though the sun wasn't up yet. A neon vest labeled HOA Surveillance Operations, and her hair was tied back so tight that she looked like an arrow ready to shoot itself into the sky. Behind her stood at least 10 HOA volunteers wearing rain ponchos as uniforms for reasons beyond human comprehension. I stepped out onto my porch. Karen, what are you doing? She raised her chin. We have initiated aerial security monitoring per HOA Emergency Authority. Emergency? What emergency? You. I ran a hand down my face. Karen, you brought drones to my property. She tapped a button. All the drones rotated toward me like synchronized alien soldiers. We are investigating the possibility of concealed installations on your farm. What does that even mean? It means, she said, drawing out every syllable, that we suspect you are building something you don't want us to see. Bah, I'm building a shed for hay. She shook her head. Too simple, too innocent. Her volunteers murmured in agreement like an audience trained to clap on cue. I crossed my arms. Karen, you can't spy on me. This is illegal. She smiled, the kind of smile people have right before they get tackled by police. We are not spying. We are observing. Observations are allowed. At 6 in the morning, anytime community safety is at risk. One of the drones dipped too low and clipped a tree branch. It spun, wobbled, and crashed into a bush with a sad PFF sound. Karen gasped as if someone had shot her child. Who attacked drone 7? It hit a branch. She spun toward her volunteers. Write that down. Property owner aggressively assaulted HOA aerial asset with, she glanced at the tree, illegal vegetation. Illegal vegetation? I said, incredulous. That's a walnut tree. It's older than you. Then it is an unregistered structure, she snapped. It must be reported. My brain attempted to leave my body at this point. 2 volunteers rushed toward the crashed drone and lifted it like a fallen comrade. Karen saluted it. The drone beeped feebly. Karen whispered, be strong. I exhaled. Karen, shut the drones off. No. Yes. No. I took a step forward. The drones all widened their formation like an army defending their queen. Karen, you are trespassing on airspace you do not own. She lifted her remote. We own the view. The view. Karen, the view isn't real property. You can't claim ownership of something photons are still traveling through. Obstructs community harmony. Karen, your drones are literally blocking the sunrise. Exactly. We must control what residents see to maintain morale. We're running a farm dictatorship. She pursed her lips. A harmonious community requires oversight. I stared. She stared. A chicken wandered up beside me and stared too. The chicken seemed smarter at that moment. I took a breath. Karen, turn off the drones or I call the sheriff. Her sunglasses glinted. Go ahead. Karen took a breath, lifted her chin, and said the most unhinged sentence of the entire saga. Effective immediately, you are banned from entering your own land without AJ permission. I looked at her slowly. Karen, I live here. She smirked. Not anymore. And that's when I realized something important. Karen wasn't trying to win. Karen was trying to conquer. This wasn't HOA VO for EV farm. This was HOA reality. And she was losing ground fast.